the debrief. What do we say? No sugarcoating, only spicy takes.
Yeah. So
Tune in, hit subscribe.
The backstory and the shameless plug here is we started a podcast about 6 months ago because I think over drinks we like to banter, and we decided to expose other people to our banter. But it's been really fun, and so we're gonna do our first live recording, and you're our first guest actually ever. So I'm very excited for this. But I appreciate everyone coming down after lunch. Hopefully, did y'all enjoy the morning? Was that interesting, valuable, insightful? Okay, cool. So, the idea of the morning was to talk about big topics that shape, our world from a TA perspective, but not talk about it just concretely from a recruiting perspective, but just talk about those topics. And we're going to transition to a little bit more TA focused content, for the next couple of conversations. And for this particular conversation, the topic, as you see, on the screen, is building an AI native TA organization. The word AI native gets thrown around a lot, but I think we would all acknowledge that, a feeling that we need to not just embrace technology, but actually adopt new ways of working to actually work the best with technology. And I think AI native, might be, well, not to jump ahead, but to capture that concept. And so we're going to talk about what does that even mean? How does an AI native TA function operate different from it did a few years ago, practically speaking, and kind of unpack that. So before we jump off, let's do quick intros down the line, and then we can get into it. Scott, can you go first?
Absolutely. My name is Scott Dicke. I am the VP of Talent at MaintainX. Really excited to be here.
That's it?
You want me to tell some more?
Yeah.
I worked at, so I was 11 years at Robert Half, a long time to be in staffing agency. It was, sorry for some of you that have bad experiences with them, not my fault. I left and then was at a company called Motive, used to be called Keep Truckin', and then went to Handshake and now am at MaintainX.
Cool, what does MaintainX do?
MaintainX it's about a $100 million software company that's focused in frontline workers, maintenance software,
cool.
kind of the way they
awesome.
track workers.
Great.
So.
Awesome. I'm Chris Abbass, CEO and founder of Talentful. We provide talent solutions and RPO to some of the world's most ambitious tech companies. I'm really excited about this talk because I think that AI has the ability to give us all superpowers, and that's what it feels like right now, for our teams, but also the thing I'm really excited about is how it can elevate us as executives and leaders. And I think there's a huge amount there to do.
All right, and I'm Tracy St. Dicke. I'm the global head of talent at Zapier. Zapier is the most connected AI orchestration platform. Before that, I've been at Zapier for about 4 years. Before that, I led national recruitment at Teach for America. So very different field, but very similar problems and challenges in talent. And yeah, I'm really excited about this because I'm just here to represent the work of my team, which is they're absolutely on fire in this AI era right now. So most of what I'll be talking about is all the good work that they're doing that's bubbling up.
Cool. I think the starting place, which I kind of alluded to earlier, was the phrase AI native gets thrown around a lot. I want to hire AI native talent. I want to be an AI native team. Let's start with Tracy. Give me your working definition. What makes a TA function AI native versus a TA function that uses AI or whatever?
I mean, are we even saying AI native now? Are we saying AI
or maybe
pilled?
you think it's a BS phrase. I don't know, whatever direction
well,
you want to go.
I think we moved on. Now it's AI pilled, and which is like a vibe, I think, more than anything else. So AI native, I would say for me, AI native comes down to two things. One is strategic vision, and that's usually coming from the TA leader, which I think is important for everybody in this room. And then it is the AI fluency of your team. And why I say those two things is that is a TA leader, if you don't have the strategic vision of how your function is fundamentally going to change, how you have to actually redesign the factory and break hiring the process down into its core components and then rebuild them in this AI era, if you're not holding that vision or trying to figure out that vision, then I think it's hard to be an AI native team because then you're just chasing tools. And then the second thing, in terms of your team's AI fluency, I really believe in this, and it is absolutely the responsibility of every manager to upskill their team in terms of AI fluency, but that's important for a TA team, which typically doesn't always have all the most resources in terms of engineering and IT to building the things that you want to do. As your team becomes more AI fluent, they can actually solve the problems for themselves, and you're not waiting on a vendor's roadmap to do it for you. You can say, yep, this is the problem. I'm that subject matter expert, and I can build. I have now created a solution faster than we've ever seen before. So an AI native team to me is that. It's strategic vision from the leader, and it's really building the fluency skills of your team.
Chris, Scott, anything you'd add in terms of like?
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I mean,
Way to go, guys.
yeah, this is the problem about being on a panel with Tracy. So I think the place we're in is we're building kind of two different companies. One is for humans to be successful, and one is for agents and AI to be successful. And I actually think that involves thinking from first principles and re-architecting all the workflows in your business. And so I think the companies that are optimizing for that, I consider to be AI native.
Can I double click on that? So can you give some, well, maybe this is, we're gonna get to this later, but I don't think we have this question. Making the function ready for agents. Like what are the actual things that go, what are the actual pillars that go into that from your perspective that you're?
For me, it all starts with the kind of foundational layer of data.
Yes.
So having the data that you want being readily available, clean, structured, high quality and accurate for agents to read and then process. So making sure that the workflows are such in your organization that that data is being submitted accurately, on time. That's the first step. And I think that's behavioral change as much as anything else, but I would say that's where I'd start.
Sound like resonant,
You stole first principles thinking. I mean, that's what I was going to say too. Geez, I have to go third. But honestly, with first principles thinking, when you're looking at the talent function, and just to kind of add on to this, I think recruiting in general has been a fairly manual process. There's been filling out scorecards, being able to have to type all those out, creating interview plans, making sure scorecards are up to date and have the most up to date questions that are tied to principles that are within the company. A lot of these things just become this huge administrative burden that recruiters tend to just get exhausted by. They kind of forget, and then all of a sudden you got scorecards out in the wild that are 2 years old, or you have people that are using interview plans that are not up to date. And that is really where I've mainly utilized AI within my team. When you're talking about outside of our system, where if they're using a Claude or an OpenAI, giving them very strict prompting and very strict ways to look into like a golden data set of this is how we structure interviews, and these are the principles that we have, and this is how you build rubrics. And you having that data set in a Notion or wherever whatever you tend to use, Confluence. And when the recruiters are prompting it, it's then going to that area and building it out for them and allowing them for an easy way to just be adding this into your greenhouse or your Ashby. I think that's really where you can take AI to the next level. And then also from cross-functional, getting headcount approved. It's in the middle between finance and HR and people ops. And this is, what level is it? What comp range? Did finance actually approve this or not? All of that awful stuff that just sits in Google Sheets, and everyone's probably like going, "Oh yeah, I'm dealing with that right now, literally on Slack." Like I have people complaining about their headcount. That's really where you can utilize these tools to make that so much smoother and so much cleaner, and get people like all aligned and on the same page, and get your recruiters activated quick.
I had some other questions in the intro, but I'm going to skip them because they curveball here. I want to, like, you all talk about first principles. So part of first principles is like thinking about org design. So I want to pose the question of, how is an AI native TA function maybe structured differently from an org design perspective? Roles, ratios, structure. Maybe that's in place today. Maybe you're like on that journey, but if you're on that journey, maybe what it should look like in 12 months. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in, but just like very practically, traditional org structure that you might have had before in your TA function, it's AI native. How is it maybe different, potentially, going forward?
To me, it's the coordinator to recruiter ratio that you look at. I think traditionally you had that before where it was like 3 recruiters to 1 coordinator, or 4 recruiters to 1 coordinator. And that was because we were all using maybe a greenhouse system and having modern loop on top of it. And it was just very manual back and forth processes, where now we have more auto scheduling, and we have things that are already being built out, job descriptions that are being built quickly, interview plans that are being built quickly, stuff that would often be given to the coordinators and the operations people. They can do that faster now. I think, with sourcers, you now have Juicebox agents, or you have other, AI sourcing tools. They can now take on more recs. more positions because they can launch certain
Are you
agents.
seeing that in practice?
Yeah.
Are you actually seeing that in practice? Like the recs per person changing?
Yes, absolutely. So now they can take on more. But I wouldn't necessarily, this is like a nuanced conversation because I think this is where you go down this path of, oh, well, job loss. To me, we're all going to get really good at this. All of us in this room, we're all going to get really good at this. The recruiters are all going to get really good at it. And guess what? We're all competing against each other for the same talent. So now all of a sudden, your recruiters are now taking on more and more openings, and your executive management now is looking at it going, oh, you have more capacity now. Sounds like we can hire faster. We can hire more. Normally, we wouldn't have given you 20 engineers to hire in the next 2 months, but it sounds like you can do that. Now that you have all this new capacity, and that's going to allow us.
The goalposts are going to move.
The goalposts are going to keep moving because it's all going to rise up with each other. So what was normal before, okay, you could hire 4 people in a month. Now you can hire 6 people in a month. Perfect. That's what our capacity plan is going to be. And now you have to go, well, now I need another recruiter.
I'll give you a concrete example. I don't think about it as much as like, I used to hire coordinators and now I'm not, and I'm now hiring this role instead.
Yeah.
That's not how I'm thinking about it right now. Because I think the skill sets that you're hiring for need to be a little bit more fluid. So when you take hiring, and this is like the question I'm obsessed with right now, is what is hiring at its core? I think it comes down to 3 things in my opinion. It is talent identification. It is talent evaluation, both skills and then also fit with company. And then it's also the candidate's evaluation of your company, because it's a 2-way street, right? In my opinion, at its core, hiring processes are just those 3 things. And so those beg different sorts of skills. You can say talent identification is like the research, it's the sourcing, it's the, whatever it is. But that doesn't have to be specific roles. It can actually all be very fluid right now. And so, for example, when I say, it's my job to make sure my whole team is AI fluent, and we have a minimum bar for AI fluency for anyone that we hire into my team, everybody on my team is ops person. So we have right now a talent strategy and ops team, but everyone's an ops person now because they can sort of build their own solutions. And what you instead need is somebody who can really corral and enable that. And is that ops or is that something else? But a concrete example is, so I was supposed to hire a leadership recruiter. I've decided to not hire a leadership recruiter because of the fact that I want to build a system around leadership recruiter enabled by AI that includes talent intelligence, expanding the network, and then like ongoing cultivation of those people over time that is actually a system that is not held by a single person that's a leadership recruiter, but is actually held by a system enabled by AI. However, when you bring candidates in, you do want a person to give them that white glove experience. So I don't need a leadership recruiter. Technically, leadership recruiting is now an ops function, but I will need cultivators to bring in, their finesse.
Can I pressure test this with 2 follow-ups?
Yeah.
One, do you actually think that folks on your team who are like generalist ops people can fluidly move from sourcing to leadership recruiting to like at the same bar of excellence and delivery, actually fluidly move across those spaces? And 2, how much of what you're doing is enabled by like the size of your team, the fact that you're in like an AI company, and like does it scale to other types of organizations, larger enterprises, maybe a larger scale?
Well, I still think there's a subject matter expertise that's necessary, but I think that you can build the AI fluency skills on top of that. So I think it's actually a little bit different. It's not, and it is a nuanced conversation. It's not all my ops people are now incredible recruiters. It's my incredible recruiters can now also be ops people.
Ops in what sense? Like when you say ops?
Like building workflows, solutions,
tooling,
enablement for hiring managers.
Yeah. I hate the word coordinator now. I've abolished it. Like they're recruiting operations specialists. And what's cool now is that I think there was these like boxes, kind of to your point, that everyone was in. And now you can look at the traditional coordinator job as, look, a lot of this stuff we can kind of automate now. Like now, what else do you want to do? Do you want to help me continue to optimize BrideHire or optimize Ashby, or help me build better processes, flows? There's just infinite work. There's infinite work. And that now with all these like new tooling, you're giving these people the opportunity to rise up beyond just the administrative part of the job.
Chris, you have 350 recruiters. Across your organization and across all your clients. You're also seeing how a lot of your clients operate. So I have two questions. One is, are you thinking about their jobs, like their jobs in your context differently? And is Tracy and Scott, what they're describing, compare that to all of your clients that you have? Is this like, no, this is a total outlier? And
no, I think there's a huge spectrum of people on the curve. And what I'm seeing is we're all learning still. I think the jury is out on how this is really going to impact because of the rate of change. And I think what we have to index on is people who can navigate that change effectively. And when I struggle with a decision, I always try to ask myself a question back. And if we end up in this state,
I thought you said you ask AI.
Yeah, that too. So talking about friends with AI, but yeah, and I think that if we were in a world where we had a fully AI native organization in talent, what would the skill set of someone be to achieve our objectives? And I think it's still undecided if that person needs recruiting experience at all at that point.
Really?
Right?
You really think that?
Well, if your business has the context, right, that can be queried, people can learn, come in, they can get that context immediately. I think it's good problem solving, it's intelligence, it's proactivity, it's all the behaviors that we index on. We're not doing brain surgery, right? And I think that it's about solving those problems, those business problems, if you could have the automations in place and the context in place to walk into. What would be?
I'm just thinking about
the recruiting.
I'm just about the interaction.
skills?
Like, let's just take the candidate-facing side and all the nuance on how people go through their decision process around taking opportunity, and all the nuances around, kind of working through that decision process with somebody and fit and all that. You think you can drop somebody in from who's never done it before and give them organizational context and they can do it?
If I have a rubric of how we negotiate offers and run an offer process, and I have this historic data that shows the most successful way we can make offers and get a higher close rate, and I could query that, then I think a smart person could pick that up.
I have an example. Wait, this one. Okay, Eileen, we actually did use this slide. So here we go. So this is a very small example of something that Chris, I think, is talking about, where how do you just drop somebody in who how can they use all this context of the organization to then convince the candidate to join, right? So one of the things we built, and we built this as late as last year, it's an example of AI orchestration, and it actually uses BrightHire. But so, for example, we have company contacts that we keep in a database. Anything that's news that comes out about Zapier, someone can add like a quick emoji in Slack, and then it pulls up into a Google Sheet, and AI uses that to say like, okay, here's what the article was, here's what, here's like the TLDR, here is a snippet that you could send to a candidate, here's the type of candidates that it would maybe work best for, right? That's one part of it. The second part of it is an agent that you can pull up in your ATS. It says like, an Ashby, hey, tell me about this candidate and what should I send them, right? So if you were a recruiter that had no context about the organization, by running that agent, it looks at Ashby, it looks at all of the BrightHire notes, because we know not everything that happens in an interview gets into a scorecard, but it looks at all the context that we have about the candidate. It then compares that to anything that we have about Zapier that is really, so it takes all of that, it says, these are the candidate's motivations, these are the candidate's concerns, is that right or wrong? The human in the loop says yes or no. Then it says, okay, given that, here's all of the information that's recent news about Zapier. Here's all of the events that are coming up about Zapier. Let me match the things that we should send the candidate with their specific motivations and concerns. Here is a draft of an email you can send them. Can you look at it and click yes? And then you click yes, and then it sends it. So you can have a context layer about your organization that you could have somebody like from Talentful come in, have no context about Zapier, but can have really compelling cultivation tactics at the tips of their fingers. So anyway, because you said that was like a really
I'm long somebody getting up to speed very fast. I'm just thinking about somebody going from, some total like other profession and coming in and doing that. I feel like those are different things.
What you're discussing, it's a great system. I have something similar where we can take all this context and create like a great objection handling, and when they say this, say that, and this is but that's feature versus benefit selling too. Like if we're going to get down that sales route, I think there is a certain aspect. There's an art to the close. There's the counter offers. There's the red flags. There's candidates saying one thing during the interview process and then completely changing their mind and becoming a different person at the end. That never happens, right? Yeah. The candidates don't change their mind. They're always 100% true. I mean, that part is where a recruiter that's got a lot of repetition and has like a established closing way and can zig when they need to zig and zag when they need to zag. I think that's where the human in the loop will probably always exist.
But I do want to talk about, sorry, I'm just playing devil's advocate because it's let's talk about, okay, it's an AI native function and you talked about this a little bit. And so you're hiring into that. Like, what is a person who's going to thrive in this environment look like? What are you actually evaluating for? Chris, maybe you can speak you hire a ton of recruiters. So how has that changed? How are the profile changed and why? What are the traits and why are they important in a more AI forward?
Well, we used to do like a live sourcing task and we used to do all the kind of steps, get them to type out a Boolean string, things that now seem like incredibly insane. And now people will just show up with exactly the same template because they put it into an AI LLM, right? Now what we do is we have them talk through how they're using AI, how they've built things into their workflows. We look at their prompts, so how they got to the end result, not just the end result. Because I think that shows the distinction between someone who is just getting an output and running with it versus someone who's crafting and refining using the technology. And I think what we want is subject matter experts who can synthesize all the information in the technology to enhance their ability. And so we bring those people through the process. I think the thing that has got progressively more important to us is how much people are playing with this stuff and using it in their everyday roles as a workflow. I think there's really no excuse right now for people not to be using this and being excited about it. And I think the time where we qualify those people out has happened. I think we're being a lot more lenient in the kind of last 6 months. But for us, it's a non-negotiable.
Dropping the hammer on AI, AI fluency.
Yeah. Same here.
I know you have like a whole framework around AI fluency and hiring. Maybe you can like give the debrief or give the overview.
I'll give the high level, but we open source this. We share it. The external version of our rubric you can find on Zapier. But I'll say, so to the original question of like, I'm looking for recruiters who can learn hard things fast. And a piece of that, learning hard things fast, having that curiosity very much plays into how we think about AI fluency. So when we set our minimum bar for AI fluency at all of Zapier, whether it's an engineer, an accountant, or a recruiter, we have 4 components that we look at. We look at mindset, we look at strategic acumen or strategy, we look at actual builder skills, and then we added a 4th component more recently in our 2nd version, which is accountability and discernment. And so just to like break those down very quickly, mindset is a lot of the things that you said, Chris. It's like, how are you getting curious about the tools? How are you getting excited? How are you leaning in with experimentation in AI and thinking about what's possible? Strategic acumen or strategy is a little bit more function specific. So if I was hiring a recruiter, we ask the question, how do you think recruiting is going to change in the few years? What are the parts that should and shouldn't use AI? And why? And based on being a subject matter expert in your function, what does that make you think about the future? Because we want to ensure that they're thinking on a strategic level, not just what do I do as a recruiter today, but what is the world going to look like and how do I up-level myself continually as a recruiter, in the future? Building skills themselves are a lot of the things that are just are like soft skills around using AI as a thought partner, iteration. It's not necessarily I know how to use this tool or I can vibe code this thing, but it's like when I use AI, I use it in this way as a thought partner with a lot of iteration. And here's how I prompt it, and here's what I think about, and this is why. And then the last piece, accountability, is very important to us now because especially in people work, you have to know where do I use AI and where do I not? Do I understand what is a good output versus what is AI slop? How do I change that? How do I work with that? And how do I express that to other people, hiring managers, et cetera? So that accountability piece is. So those are our 4 components, and then we have like different levels of capable, adoptive, and transformative.
How do you, just double click 1 second?
Yeah.
It seems like the hardest thing, having an amazing framework and having a great framework as a start. Obviously, the hard part we always know is like translating that across many people in the organization, making sure people are calibrated. Can they actually implement that in practice during an interview? It's like a real time, how have you thought about making sure that people are actually calibrated and can actually judge on those 4 criteria and do it across like a bunch of different roles of different types?
Yeah, I mean, the calibration is the most important, and we put a lot of investment in there. And my little change management trick is that I work with the 2 groups of people that I can more like concretely control, which are my recruiters and my executive team, to some extent. So when we do the calibration, we assess for AI fluency in 4 parts of our funnel: application, recruiter screen, a live skills test, which is the little bit more technical part depending on the role, and then our executive interview. And so when I think about calibration, I ensure that my recruiters are really calibrated to the rubric and together, and my executive team is really calibrated to the rubric and together. And we've built this rubric together with the executive team, so it is also translating down within each of their functions. And they've even created examples of what is each part of our rubric look like in their own function. So they're very invested and they're very calibrated groups. So that's why, from a change management perspective, I can feel really confident in our calibration to the rubric and how we're assessing it.
One more, sorry, last question.
Yeah.
It's amazing to integrate it into like all 4 of those steps. I'm imagining I'm in a 100,000 person enterprise organization. It's gonna be pretty hard to like scale that across every team, every step. Is there something that's very high signal that's within the recruiter screen specifically? Like if you only evaluated there, would actually do a pretty effective job of like establishing some level of AI fluency in a place that's like maybe more within the control at any scale?
I mean, I'm gonna say like yes and no. Like I guess feasibly you could say like in a recruiter screen, like show me something you've built recently and how did you think about it, right? Like so you can get a lot of those behaviors and orientations and approach by just asking them to like show you something that they've built and how they're using it. But I would also say no, because one of the things that we found that feels important to us is something that we say is we're looking at the slope and not the snapshot. It's actually very intentional that we measure this throughout multiple pieces of our hiring process as a meta signal of even from when they enter the hiring process to the end, how have they even grown their AI usage and curiosity, even in that 4 to 5 to 6 week time span. But because we care about slope and not snapshot, maybe a question that people could ask at the beginning that we've been asking is, tell us how you were using AI 6 months ago, and tell us the journey between 6 months ago and now. What else have you experimented with? What have you tried? What's a workflow you tried 6 months ago that is better now? And how do you know? So maybe that's the question to kind of get it, like, how are people moving? Because that's a different candidate than someone who's used like the same 3 tools for the past 3 years and is like never changed.
Yeah. For Chris and Scott, like, again, thinking about a transition to, I want to be AI native. Okay, so some workflows need to be reinvented, and then you're probably making some delineation between, work that should be done by tech versus work that should be done by not tech, by people, living, breathing organizations. Can you give me examples of like, these are workflows we fundamentally reinvented, or these are lines that we've drawn where it's like, people should do this and not that anymore? Chris, maybe you can start, and then Scott, if you can jump.
So the way that we've been approaching things internally is by picking a very specific part of the process and being very intentional, because it kind of got out of hand where people were trying to boil the ocean, and that didn't work. So what we've said is ramp period. So when someone's taking on a new role, a new hiring manager joining the business, we want to be able to use AI to get people calibrated faster. That is it. That's all we're going to be focused on.
That's the job to be done.
That's the job to be done.
Calibration.
Speed to calibration. And I do think that is the key, is being very intentional and specific on the use case, being very narrow. And so for us, the recruiter's job is to make sure that all the pieces of the data cube are accurate. So the job description, the candidate information, and then what we do is we have AI that does research. So they will look at company history, they'll look at sourcing strategy, all of that stuff gets built out immediately for the recruiter, which speeds up calibration, right? And then what they can do is they can filter that candidate's information from transcripts and everything like that back through that initial context to get information every step through the process, and then also provide the candidate with preparation and so forth. So what we're trying to do is just speed up that initial work that people had to do, whether it's setting up a sourcing strategy, market mapping, getting kind of signal from the candidate to speed up calibration.
Go.
Yeah, speed to launch and calibration is probably the main areas that people should be using AI within talent. Like job description, or getting the headcount approved, getting that comp range, getting everything set up in the system, ready to go. What's our sourcing strategy? What's our sequencing? What's our calibration? What's the archetypes? That's all stuff that you can pull and have AI aggregate for you very quickly. Another example of something that I built, we did a lot of like AI research recruitment, and something that we were really focused on was what publications did they have? And were they first author and last author, and how many citations? And this was something you had to go on Google Scholar and do this very slow process and And then you'd have to take it to the hiring manager and a week later, and they have to review it all, blah, blah, blah. It was taking forever. And this was where we created a vibe coded tool where I kind of was like, there's got to be a faster way to do this. And I was able to find an API, a free API, that would pull all their publications, every single publication that they did. And then I would do that through a very tight prompt that would score them to a specific areas that we were focused in. And then it would surface those articles and would score them and go, this person's got the publications that we're looking for. But this was a very key part of this, is that you got to be really careful here. Because with recruiters, I was like, you can't turn them down, or this is just evaluating publications. That's it. And it's a enhancer. It is quickly discerning a bunch of info that you can't, that's taking you a long time to get, and then you're using that as part of the evaluation. And so you guys can't turn anyone down. You can't say yes or no to any one of this, but it's like, this is now a faster way to get to that decision point of their publication history. So it's a smaller example, but like that's, I think, where the nuance gets lost sometimes with using AI to evaluate people. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't have OpenAI. The hiring managers that are dumping resumes into OpenAI and saying if they're good or bad, that's absolutely crazy. But you could utilize it to find specific aspects like that.
Yep. I love the examples of like building and tools, and everyone's an ops person. How do you practically, you want to encourage experimentation, but you don't want like 5 people building a different version of the same tool, and someone's doing it this way over here and this way over there, and it's like worse than tool spread. It's like, oh, I used to be complaining because I had 3 SaaS tools, but now I have 87 homegrown like vibe coded systems,
Yes.
And some of them don't work very well, and some of them are maybe illegal. So can you talk about like the governance or like how you thought about it?
I got a good one on this one. So most of the time when people are vibe coding things, it's usually they already have the solution's probably just in their ATS or in a juice box or whatever, and they just don't know how to use it yet. Or they just realize that like no one's actually trained them how to do it.
I vibe coded Zillow the other day. That was a really stupid idea. I was like, oh, there's a website for this already. Yeah.
Or they don't realize that these things need to be, if they want to use them over and over again, they need to be deployed on a cloud, and they need security and API keys, which is a whole other rabbit hole to go down. What I did with my team was I built plugins for CoWork that I manage myself and distribute. And within these plugins, they have the exact breakdown of what our tech stack is and what it can and can't do. So you create a harness for the agents that your recruiters are using. They have to follow that harness.
Can you explain what that means? Like the harness that says what the tech stack can and can't do? Like, give me an example.
So you have a skill doc that will say, Ashby, it already has this built out in terms of reports and dashboards and automations. Like this is everything that tech stack can already do.
Yeah.
If you are an agent reading this, do not build this. Do not ask for API keys. Do not ask for any of that. That is not.
I like how the
job.
agent is the more foolproof way to control people building the wrong stuff. Yeah,
right.
Okay, fantastic.
Like you need to be very directive with that, and it takes some time. But you can work with CoWork and literally just say, "I need to create harnesses for my recruiters. Help me do that." I need to make sure that whenever they're launching an agent, that it reads this first, that it knows like what it can and can't do, and then it gives them that advice.
Tracy, I mean, y'all build so many tools. Do you have like a framework around prototype, test, it's live, don't do that again, like an inventory, something?
We do, and we've just put it into practice, I would say, in the past like 2 months. So jury's still out on how it's working. So far, it's working well. So we're really big at citizen development at Zapier because, I mean, that's also part of our mission. We believe automation can work for everyone. And so we actually want all of our folks to be building on Zapier. And so citizen development's a really important piece of experimentation in our culture, and it always has been. But then to your point is like, how do you start to harness that so you go from like this individual AI sprawl to like more institutional AI? And so very simple structure that we have on my team we've put into practice today. We have these things called build days where a lot of our team is like, we're taking protected hours out of the day once every 3 weeks, and my entire team is like building and doing some of that citizen development together. But what we try to really focus on is how are we moving some of these best practices through stages. So right now we're using Google Drive, so very simple system. Everything that they're building, that we use AI coding tools at Zapier. So everyone uses Cursor or Codex or Claude Code. My team uses Claude Code. So let's say they're building Markdown skills, .md on Claude Code. They're building it in their own personal folder so we can all see it. We also have a skill that audits everything that's built to ensure that there's nothing, exactly what you have, to ensure that there's nothing that is like, oh, you're pulling in an API key in a way that you shouldn't, or this is using PII in a way that it shouldn't. So it has sort of that protection layer of the things that people are building in the moment before they can deploy. Then after they're done building it in their personal folder, we have something called a staging folder. And so people literally move some of the workflows that they're building into the staging folder that then all of my recruiters and team can access on Google Drive, and then they can test it. So let's say a recruiter built a skill that's related to reporting that they're doing. They put it in the staging folder, and all of the other recruiters can also test that skill, build upon it, give feedback, see how it works in practice. So we're actually not just everybody building their own, but we're trying to encourage helping make some like core things better with everybody's input and everybody's sort of lens on it. Once we feel like it's in a place where like, okay, that's now actually like really good, we move it to another stage in our Google Drive context layer. It might be what we call templates, which is, everybody needs to use this. We've now determined as a TA team, this is a best practice. We want you to use it, but you have to still modify it for your context. So here's a skill, you can copy it, you can put it into your code tool and run it, but you still need to modify it because you're a tech recruiter, not a go-to-market recruiter. So we have those. And then at the very highest level, we have what we call our master folder. And that is where the things where I, myself, my leadership team has said, that is a best practice. And I want every recruiter using that starting like tomorrow, for example. So we have these different ways to like encourage citizen development, put it in a testing phase, and then determine where it goes in terms of how we want people to deploy it and utilize it. And we're always auditing it too, right? Because we're always going to get better. So we might move things back into a staging folder, and then everyone's kind of playing with it. And then okay, now it's better. Now let's move it back to a master.
I love talking to Tracy because it makes me feel like I'm on the C team every time. I'm like, oof, I gotta get back home and get to work. So that was awesome. Let's say I'm at stage 2 out of 10. Like, can you talk about like the team transformation? Maybe Chris and Scott, you can talk about like how do we get people from like 2 to 4 to 7? Like, and there's stages of the adoption, acceptance. Can you talk about like what you've learned? Yeah.
I think the thing for me is like getting people to see the magic themselves. When people have that realization, I think that really does create adoption. A lot of this is like theoretical to people, and they're not seeing it impact their everyday lives. But I think that the annoying thing is that a lot of the foundational stuff is quite boring and mundane. Like, you have to get your team to do their admin properly. They have to put the data in the right places. There has to be a single source of truth for this information that we're using as a business. But I think once that's done, you can really start giving people access. So one of the things that we've done, for example, going back to the beginning, is we've been very clear on what our single sources of truth are. Is it ATS, HRIS, HubSpot? And anything that's built internally has to pull from those platforms. And what that does is if someone's building something and the data is inaccurate, the output's useless. So it actually creates this loop of people wanting to build something that's useful and then realizing, I can't do this because my single source of truth is not updated. And they'll even start going and harassing people who are in control of that information to make sure it's updated.
Or have their agents harass them?
All the agents, yeah. So I think you have to think of the incentive structure in your business. Again, going to first principles, like what the workflows look like. But I have Slack channels with an agent in that pulls from all of our company's databases. And I've got, my people are treating it like a colleague. They're like, hey, Claude Bass, can you help me with this? I want to create an Excel spreadsheet that analyzes the last 5 months of performance for my team and it shows outliers. And it's like really great to see that happen.
We could do a whole session. Chris is very inspiring. I was like, maybe we touch this for like 1 second, actually. Can we go 1 second? Okay. Chris, I think like as leaders, AI is really amazing leverage in terms of visibility and so forth. Can you give like 30 seconds on like some of the stuff that you're doing as a leader, as someone who's running a business to sort of enable yourself? Because we talked a lot about like enabling the team and AI native function, but as a leader, your effectiveness impacts your team. So what are you doing in terms of personal effectiveness?
I mean, for me, one of the biggest impacts is creating what I call the CEO compass. And this has been me looking at like the workflows and the data that I need in my business and creating a dashboard across the organization that pulls all of this stuff in. And I run my one-to-ones on this dashboard. So similar kind of mechanism that I was talking about before. All my heads of department are responsible for keeping it up to date. So when we have one-to-ones, the data is accurate. And that's allowed me to see patterns across my business that I've never been able to see before and ultimately drive better decision-making. So I think that as leaders, we have access to this. I get a summary every morning telling me, what are the biggest opportunities? What are the things I should focus on? Like, what are the biggest red flags? And that kind of stuff's really priceless. I didn't have that information before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, last thing. It's a year from now, and you're talking about, this is what we've done the last year, and this is how my function has changed, or how my organization's changed. What are you doing a year from today that you don't think you're doing today, or is your team doing, or how are you working differently? I did send these in advance, so. You guys are like, stumped.
We are seeing 30 other questions. I mean,
We have to pretend to think.
You have to pretend to like, geez, I would never thought of that before.
I had a good answer a few weeks ago.
I think recruiting, at the end of the day, is the basic components of it, of going out there and finding the right people and getting them in, like that's still probably going to be pretty similar a year from now. But I think my goal really is you have people that are just able to quickly action and get after it, and maybe not doing the resume reviews. I could see resumes becoming more and more obsolete a year from now, and we're doing more prompting and more AI interview and prompting, and it's more of an amalgamation of their like social profile. And that ties into not even a real job description. They're just sending that profile into a company, and then you have something on the back end that kind of works in a similar way and matches them. Like, I think that's where you could see recruiting getting real galaxy brains, where you just have this like resume that's AI created to a job description that's AI created. I was talking to someone else about this, and it's just so silly. It's like a piece of paper matching to another piece of paper.
It's spy versus spy.
Right? And so I think whoever kind of solves that, if we can find a way to solve that really like misalignment of two pieces of paper matching to each other, that's where I could see like the next evolution going.
Yeah. So I think as a general point, I'm very, very optimistic. I think there's going to be more roles created, not less.
Me too.
But I think that the three things I think are everyone's going to have a personal agent and a professional agent. I think that there's going to be AI operations, AI maintenance is going to be a big role in the company. And I think actually people are doing this already, but I think that token budgets are going to be a real thing inside companies. When you're doing a headcount planning, putting budget aside for token usage, I think that's going to be a big part of the P&L for companies.
I completely agree with that, and not the token piece, but like the everyone having their agents, everyone having the content.
Do you think those agents are portable? I leave the company and I take it somewhere else with me.
I think there's going to be a real
really spicy question.
Yeah. You can if you have a GitHub
intellectual
repo.
Property of the company.
You have a GitHub repo with all the.
Is it the company's intellectual property if it's you talking to it and it's capturing what you're saying?
It's
a very great question.
You should have a panel on that.
Yeah. All right, we have to wrap. So,
I would say, the question, yes, what will be different in a year by the end of the year? Very much agree with what Scott and Chris said. I would also say, I hope that we're moving to a place where if I look across all of my TA workflows and systems, that you can't pull the AI out of it anymore. Like, I hope that we have rebuilt and stripped down hiring to its parts and then rebuilt it in this new era, which would mean things like, why do we have resumes? Why do we have applications? Like, all of the things that have meant to facilitate those three core things that I mentioned before, like, we've rethought what that looks like now in this new era. So that would be one. I would also say I love this idea of just recruiting teams being able to solve their own problems. Where, I think part of this is not having to rely on a vendor's roadmap, however great BrightHire's roadmap might be. Like, I don't want to have to rely on my ability to fulfill a vision for hiring by waiting on if BrightHire, Ashby, or whoever is going to build it. I want to be able to build it ourselves. And utilizing the tools that we have, but also being able to orchestrate them together so that we're actually creating tailored solutions for your own company, for your own team, in the place where your team does the work. And so one of the things that I'm really obsessed with is utilizing all of the awesome tools that we have, like BrightHire and Ashby and all of that, but like pulling that and making that callable into Slack, for example, because my team works, as an organization, we work mainly out of Slack. So how do you think about creating a team and a process and systems that not only work for hiring, but they work for your personal company where the work is being done? And I think that personalization is really important, and that will allow us to expand the capacity of the human elements because you're automating so much of the toil. And so that's my optimistic hope. I'm very optimistic about the future. My team is like, I was telling someone this last night, my team has never been so much on fire for like how much fun they're having. Like, don't get me wrong, they're still exhausted. Everyone's exhausted, but they're having a lot of fun building and finding these moments where they can actually do more of what they really love and less of what we call the toil. And so I hope by the end of the year, we're really living into that.
Speaking of budgets, I badly mismanaged the time budget on this panel. So I think if like, I would love to do questions, but I see like the next panel queuing up. So these folks will be around for the rest of the day, happy hour, whatever. So if you have questions, like this is the one panel where I screwed it, and they're gonna have to go up and talk to them one-on-one afterwards. But thank you so much for the conversation. I really appreciate it, and there's lots more to unpack here, but so appreciate y'all joining us, and let's give a hand for the panel.
Tune in and get the debrief.